Hello, everybody, and welcome to the MVP show here on YouTube. I'm John Vicari with Dan Passante and Brennan Miller. Boys, we are back and better than ever, and it was another chaotic week in terms of just sports and everything in the world. I hope you're okay. And Brennan, you did it again. You did it again.
Absolutely. You'd think I would have learned after the first song.
I was gonna say something, but then I was just like, no, we're fine. But
right. I'm glad that you thought better of me.
Yes. Yeah. No, it's okay. Believe me. The way we introed I introed the podcast that was just on VIC that I hope some people are coming over from. That was a mess up on my part too. But so we're not as clean as we want to be, but it's okay. 2 weeks in a row we hit it. Dan, you have to come up with a problem to start next week, just so we all.
I got a lot of ideas. Don't even worry. I got it.
Great. I'm scared.
Sweet.
Oh boys. So we'll start what we didn't talk on the podcast, and we're talking right here on the YouTube show, and that's the state of New York football, and it's crap, like it always is, or it's been the last 3 years. And I was wrong last week. I thought the New York Giants could compete with the San Francisco AAA 49ers. The problem was, I didn't think the New York Giants would play like a single A organization. They were terrible. There was not one good thing. You could say, oh, they kept it close in the first half, which they did. But was it really in the mind's eye that they were going to score a touchdown? Did anybody watching believe that they could put it in pay dirt? I didn't. I was watching just hoping the defense would come up with stops and it'd be a field goal game. It'd be like an old Alabama LSU game, and the Giants would win 15-12, all based on field goals. Because that was the only way they were going to win. They couldn't protect Daniel Jones again. James Bradbury, who's still the best corner and leads the league in pass defenses, he came to play, but eventually he had to let up a couple of receptions because they just kept going to him, and there was no pass rush. So Nick Mullins, I couldn't even think of his name because he's not good, was back there for 4 seconds, just delivering all over the field. And you could say what you want again with the Giants, and I touched on this last week. Hey, Saquon was out. Hey, your top target in Sterling Shepard was out. The 49ers were missing the best player on their defense, the 3 best players on their offense. Their long snapper in that game couldn't get it into the holder. They struggled so much on the extra point, so much so that they should have had 2 missed extra points. 1 missed extra point was, mishandled by the holder, but the Giants committed a face mask, so they got another shot to do it, and then they kicked it through. That's crazy. They gave us 2 missed extra points. When does that ever happen? And not just, bad kick or the wind, because their holder couldn't handle the ball. We played the 49ers, and this is not even trying to devalue them. The 49ers could have played maybe 25 NFL organizations on last week with that roster and lost. But they were lucky enough to play the New York Giants. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I'm saying this, and they're not even the worst team in New York. The Jets are terrible. It's craziness, and and everyone knows where I stand. In terms of being a Giant fan, I just want to come out and say I was wrong. Probably not going to talk about them again with the picks. There's so much good and so much other craziness happening that it's just going to be an intro and then giving the pick. But the Giants, man, I don't know why I got my hopes up.
John, it's getting to the point where it's kind of sad.
Yeah,
to come here every week and just hear you talk about how bad your team is. Like I don't feel good about. Like I sit here laughing, but it's kind of like it's like that uncomfortable laugh, like
sure,
like laughing at like a funeral or something. You know what I'm talking about? Where like you're not supposed to, but that makes you want to laugh even more. Like that's exactly what this is, because I know that as a fan of a team that's that bad, and you have to watch them go out and lose to, as you mentioned, like the AAA San Francisco 49ers. Like that's not a good thing. But also I'm sitting here and it's just it's. I feel bad for you, man. I really do.
I appreciate it.
It's rough, man. I mean, like you said, if the Niners played any other team, probably would have lost. That's just how it goes, though. Got New York last week, and now here we are. Yeah.
And the Giants play the Rams.
It's any other team. It's any other team except for the Jets, though.
Yes.
So it's the other New York City team.
Yep.
Because both of them like. John, what is the issue really? Like for both of these sides, I feel like neither of them can hold up on the defensive side of the ball.
I mean, that's the bad part though. The Giants' defense actually statistically is way better than last year. That's the scary part. They're top 20, I think, in against the rush and top 25 in pass, which I know not great, but they were bottom 30 in all those categories. And They allowed, I think it was 30 points a game last year. They're at 25 or 26 this year. So, and there's like 5 or 6 defenses that have allowed more points. So they're technically, I think, out of the 0-3 teams, one of the better defensive teams. The problem is, Brennan, I think, at least last week, it was time and possession. The 49ers have this long drive in which they tie it up and it's a field goal right towards the end of the second quarter. And I believe the score was 6-6. All right, it was a 7-minute drive. 49ers only settled for a field goal, this and that. Jones gets the ball, one incompletion, then the next pass is an interception. And then what do you expect? Now the 49ers have the ball at the 35. They're not going to punch it in after the defense has been out there for 7 minutes? Like, I can't even be too mad at the defense because, again, they weren't supposed to come in statistically as this, this great defense. They were supposed to be an improvement from last year, which they are. So they're sort of playing up to their billing in a way, which is sad because they gave up 36 points last week. And it's playing up to their billing just because the offense gives them no shot. And it's a second-year quarterback in Daniel Jones. I understand that. But he's got to perform better. Under the circumstances, he does. And he still shows flashes, and I hate using that word because the Jets fans use it with Darnold too. He still shows flashes, in my opinion, that he's the franchise guy. He's level-headed. All the reads that he makes, like, there's some throws that Darnold makes that you're just like, what was he thinking on that? I could think what Jones is doing. He just didn't execute it correctly. So it's just infuriating. But the Giants play the Rams 4:05, so at least I get to watch Red Zone during the 1 o'clock hour. And so does New York. New York doesn't have to be ruined by any teams playing in the 1 o'clock hour, and that's because the Jets played on Thursday night. They lost a close one to the Denver Broncos, and I don't even know what to say about the Jets. We could break down that game and Quinn Williams, a costly face mask, and this and that, but I'm going to pose this question to you guys because it's been the conversation and the Jets fan cry. Should they get rid of Gase? Because I don't you have to have a culture shock of something. They're supposed to, again, be better than last year. And they might be the worst team in the NFL.
Yeah, I don't even think. I mean, you say like, should they get rid of Gase? Yeah. And the answer is yes. Obviously, whatever he's doing isn't working. He's supposed to be an offensive guru when the offense isn't able to put any points on the board. When they have Le'Veon Bell, who I was thinking about it last week, if he stays with the Steelers and continues to put up numbers like he did when he was behind that big Steelers offensive line, like he's a borderline Hall of Famer, and now he's on the Jets and pretty much forgotten about. Like, no one really cares, and he's not considered one of the top, 20 running backs in the league. You're supposed to have this offensive guru, but he's not putting points on the board, so fire him. I feel like that's the borderline, or that's how things need to go. But then they came out last week and said that for this Thursday night game, Gase isn't playing for his job. Like, they came out and said that this game would have no bearing on whether or not he was going to get fired, and that makes no sense to me. I get it that you're trying to put this investment into a new head coach, but at the same time, if it's not working and he's not doing the thing that you specifically brought him in to do, why is he still your head coach?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that. I think that moving on from him is the way that they should go. Initially, I don't know if that was my thoughts. Like, when the season first started, I thought, if they fire him, are they going to win any more games? And who knows, because the roster is so brutal. But at the same time, there needs to be a change, and he's not doing well, So really, any change they can make in any way to just try and look to the future and have a brighter future than right now. Like, at least in New York, or I should say not New York, at least with the Giants, people feel like Daniel Jones could someday be the guy. And with the Jets, I don't know that the majority of people feel like Sam Darnold is going to be it. I feel like that's a lot more debated. But yeah, I feel like moving on from Gase would be smart for them.
Yeah, and then you mentioned Sam Darnold. Like, last week I said I was completely out on Sam Darnold, and he needs to go and tank for Trevor. But at this point, I think he had a really good game on Thursday, especially after that sack in the first half where he came down on his shoulder. It looked like he was going to be out. The funniest part of that was when he went in the blue medical tent and there was somebody already in it, so he couldn't actually get medical attention at the time. He had to go to the locker room. But then he came out a few minutes later. It was his throwing shoulder that he landed on, and yet he was still hucking the ball around for the rest of that first half and then into the second. So I think he showed a lot of toughness, and I'm kind of back on Sam Darnold as being maybe a quarterback that the Jets can work with, but at the same time, Gase is supposed to be a quarterback's coach. I mean, he was Peyton Manning's coach with the Colts. Peyton Manning pretty much got him the job with the Jets because they were looking, and they went to Peyton Manning and said, hey, is Adam Gase a coach, or could he be a head coach for an NFL franchise? And Manning said, yes, absolutely. And that's why the Jets hired him. So I don't know. I mean, I'd love to be in on Darnold, and I think he showed a lot of toughness this week. But at the same time, if you have a coach that's supposed to be a quarterback guru and you're not succeeding as a quarterback, I think that's a big question mark.
Yep. And to your point, Dan, in terms of the Giants fans believing in Jones, I think it's just a matter of less games too, because you look at it today, if Jones starts, which presumably he will, it'll be his 16th game started. So that means he just completed his rookie year, even though, again, he's in his second year because Eli took a couple of starts in last year. But yeah, there's serious questions around Darnold not being the guy, and we've touched on it in every episode with Gase being praised as this offensive whisperer. His play calling is not unique, and when you have, you understand that the Jets don't have a lot offensively. You sort of have to think outside of the box, And can he be a coach with and develop a quarterback? Does he need a quarterback like Peyton, who's already a mind that he could just sort of plug and play with? Can he take a quarterback from rookie? Because if he can't do it with Darnold, then they drafting Trevor Lawrence, even though again he's coming out better touted than Sam Darnold was. You still have to make him into an NFL quarterback. I don't think he's going to be, I mean, I guess it's safe to say, I don't know, people are talking up Lawrence, but I don't think realistically you could say right now that he's going to come in and be like Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes, So someone's got to work with him and fit him into the offense, so I don't understand it. Dan, we'll go.
And then the question becomes, too, if you're Trevor Lawrence and you see that the Jets have the first overall pick, and you've seen how they literally ruined the career of Sam Darnold at this point. Like, we don't know what he could have been had he maybe sat a year behind a veteran quarterback and then come out, or had a quarterback's coach that could make him into a star player. If you see how the Jets have pretty much ruined his career at this point, do you stay at Clemson for another year? Because he's only a junior this year and has the eligibility and the opportunity to stay at Clemson. What do you do at that point? Do you go to a franchise? Yes, you're in the NFL. Yes, you're making millions of dollars. Or do you stay back a year, hope that a better situation comes next year, and kind of bet on yourself to have a good season where you're still that number one overall pick?
And the worst thing, too, you're literally, and it's not out of the box or unrealistic at all. There's a thought that Trevor Lawrence doesn't want to play in the biggest city in the world in the number one media market with all the fans' attention because the franchise is so bad. And that's what Peyton did in 97. He came out in 98 because the Jets were touted to have that first pick, and he's like, I'm not going to the Jets. And I thought that was just an Archie, not wanting him to be a Giant, wanting Eli to be a Giant, not a Charger, and then wanting Peyton not to play in New York and be somewhere else. But, it might repeat itself. You don't know. We'll go positive because we've just opened with the negative that is New York football. But the Bills, Dan, I mean, they gave you a sweat last week and almost blew a huge lead to the Los Angeles Rams. But, hey, they got the job done.
Yeah, and like you said, almost did not drop that game last week. I was extremely nervous and very upset. But Josh Allen drove him down the field and threw it in the direction of a receiver that happened to be held by a cornerback, and they got another chance at the end zone and scored. As much as people want to say the refs handed it to him, that's how it goes in the NFL. That's how it is these days. So it was a crazy game and an unbelievable finish. 3-0, and this week playing the Raiders, it doesn't get much easier for Buffalo. But they've shown that they're at this point. I feel like I can say that they're a good team. I don't know about great, but at least they're good.
No, I think they showed a lot because in the first 2 weeks they weren't tested, and we billed last week as their first test. And I can't say they passed with flying colors, but they got through it, and that's what matters in the NFL. Wins and losses, they're undefeated, and we'll play the Oakland Raiders, and we'll give our picks on the Giants game and the Raiders Bills game later on in the show in our NFL pick segment. But yeah,
Dan, I just want to ask. At this point, where do you have Josh Allen in a potential MVP race?
I feel like he could be in the discussion. I mean, he needs to do this more often. He definitely needs to put up more numbers. I don't want to hand it to him today. The fan in me wants to hand it to him today, but I know that I cannot do that quite yet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think he's fifth right now, but he's also leading the league in I think total touchdowns maybe and passing yards. So I mean, he's a guy, he's been very good in the beginning of this year, and I assume he wasn't in 5th place when the season started, and that his odds are getting better and better. So if he keeps putting up games, obviously the guys in front of him, Russ, Aaron Rodgers, Lamar, and Patty Mahomes. So, I mean, you've got good guys in front of you, but if he can keep putting up numbers, I don't see why that's out of the realm of possibility.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I feel like if he can just do this more, then we can definitely talk about, top 3. Where do you think? But he's in a good spot. Definitely good start to the year.
Imagine that, right? Going into the season. We shift now from New York football to New York baseball. The only team going on, the Yankees. It was a fun week this past week in which they played the Indians in the Wild Card Series. They won 2-0. First game, no sweat, 12-3 win in Game 1. Garrett Cole looked good and the lineup came alive. But then in Game 2, it was a little more difficult, and we said this on the podcast, but epic. It was just an epic game. The Yankees defeated the Indians 10-9. And my concern, if you watched last week in terms of the Yankees in this series and just in the postseason going forward, was Masahiro Tanaka. And you really can't value the start that he had as concern, even though, again, he did give up 4 runs in 5 innings. But he had to pitch through a hurricane pretty much in the first inning, had the game delayed twice, and still gave them 5 innings and kept them in the game. And it was a 5-4 score. It was 4-1, and then the Yankees got back in it when Gio Urshela went yard with a grand slam. But, Brent, we touched on it. Tanaka gave the Yankees it wasn't maybe the easiest lead to overcome from, but he kept them in it, and that was his goal, and everything was thrown his way in terms of obstacles, and he didn't panic.
Yeah, I mean, you look at his performance in that game too. Yeah, he gave up 4 runs, but 2 of them were during a hurricane, and the other 2 were when Chad Green was on the mound, and they were guys that he had stranded on base. Yeah. After he maybe should not have gone in for that inning regardless. So I think he had a very, very good performance for the opportunities that he was given, excuse me. And, the other thing we talked about, the fact that the Yankees bats can be a little unreliable in games where the pitchers don't give up a few runs early. But the Yankees came out and they played very well, and everyone hit the ball, regardless of how long we had to wait. I mean, DJ LeMahieu didn't have a hit until that 9th inning when he drove in 2 runs with a single up the middle. And Luke Voigt, I think, only had 1 hit on the day, but it was a double to lead off the 7th or 8th inning late in the game. So everyone is hitting the ball. I mean, we saw a home run from Gio, obviously the grand slam. Gary Sanchez just put the ball up in the air and let the wind take that ball out to right field for a 2-run shot to give the Yankees a 5-4 lead. And obviously, they scored a lot more runs after that, but you love seeing your starting catcher, a guy that has struggled this year, being able to put the ball in the air and being able to drive it, regardless of the fact that probably would have been, a second decker in Yankee Stadium, but everywhere else it would have been a pop out to right. But the offense looked good too. Going forward against this Rays team in the divisional round, these are the top 2 teams in the American League, I think. The Rays, obviously, with the best record, and the Yankees with the most talent, but they weren't able to show it in the regular season. I think when we talked about it in the podcast, but I'm going to touch on it again, there's a few key players in this round of the playoffs that both teams have to look for. I think for the Yankees, it's Adam Ottavino in that bullpen. We saw in the second game, after Tanaka went out, the Yankees needed a little bit of long relief, and instead of Ottavino, or instead of trying to go 6 with Ottavino, 7 with Britton, 8 with Green, flip those 2, and then 9 with Chapman, they went with Johnny Lasagna for 2 innings. So Adam Ottavino is going to be a guy who, in a 5-game series, is going to be put in a tough situation, and he has to be able to come through. You're not going to be able to use Loaizaga every game. You're not going to be able to use Chad Green. You're not going to be able to use Zach Britton in every single game. You're going to have to go to those other guys, those front end arms in the bullpen. And I think Adam Ottavino is a guy who, while he does have a lot of potential, and he has been very, very good in the past, this season, not as great. So he's going to have to step up for the playoffs.
No, we touched on it. And Adam Ottavino, a 6 ERA in the season, and not, as you said, Jonathan Loaizaga was the right-hander that Boone picked in the bullpen over Adam Ottavino. But this ALDS series, which, again, as you mentioned, it'll be Yankees-Rays, starts on Monday night at 8 o'clock, and it's Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. The series is going to be determined before the next time we're on air here on YouTube. So, the Yanks are going to need their bullpen to play, to pitch well, because in 5 straight games, you're going to have to rely on arms maybe more than once, maybe more than twice. And if Adam Ottavino is a non-factor or he's someone you can't put in these high leverage situations, then it's a waste and he shouldn't be out there. And, obviously you see the trust level that Aaron Boone has in him where you're going to put, where he did put, I should say, Loaisiga in that spot. And it's concerning. Now, a thing we didn't touch on the podcast, Brett, I want to, get your thoughts on is this Rays lineup, because they don't have the talent, as you mentioned. The Yankees are easily the most talented team in the AL, but they're like, I feel, a bunch of just like role players that just find ways to get on base. And like, they don't have, I know what you said, they don't have like this star, that people know, but they all hit for like a high average, get on base, do what they have to do to win ball games. So does this Rays lineup concern you? Should I be more scared of them? Because I'm coming in thinking that the Rays starting pitching is more of a concern than their 1 through 9 in the lineup.
Well, excuse me, I'm choking on a little spit there. I think when you look at the lineup, they have quality bats. You have to have quality bats in the lineup to be the number 1 seed in the AL, especially when the AL is the offensive-sided league when you look at American League versus National League. So I think that they can hit the ball, but as you mentioned, they don't have any big stars. One of the matchups that I really I'm looking forward to is in that game 1 when Garrett Cole is on the mound. I think that game 1 is going to be very important to set a tone for the rest of the series. And I think that a matchup that is going to be very important is Garrett Cole versus G-Man Choi. G-Man Choi rakes against Garrett Cole. I don't want to get my facts wrong here, but I'm pretty sure that he has over a 600 average against Cole with a few home runs and some walks as well. So for some odd reason that no one knows why, G-Man Choi smokes the ball versus one of the top pitchers in the league. So in game 1, they're going to have at least 2 at-bats against one another, 3 if Cole goes deep into the game. And I think that he can be a guy that can turn it around. G-Man Choi, can be a guy to turn it in favor of the Rays if he can just get a hold of one, especially at Petco Park. It's a great ballpark, and I think both sides it's going to play to the offensive side for both sides. Giancarlo Stanton is another guy we haven't mentioned much, but he rakes at Petco Park, being a former member of the Marlins. So offensively, I think both sides are going to be very, very good, and I think Choi versus Cole is going to be a very interesting matchup in game 1.
In game 1, it will be Garrett Cole versus Blake Snell for the Rays. And again, that game on Monday night at 8, and it'll be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in terms of the MLB playoffs. And another factor, which we didn't touch on, but you just did, Brennan, the fact it won't be at Tropicana. It won't be at Yankee Stadium. It'll be at a National League ballpark in Petco Park. And as you said, it maybe favors the hitters over the pitchers with Cole most recently being AL. Obviously, he did begin as a Pirate, and Blake Snell being a Ray. Dan, any thoughts on this series, or how some of your family members are reacting to the Yankees playoff run?
Well, this entire time, I'm just thinking about how a few weeks ago we were talking about the panic button with the Yankees, and now that they are in the playoffs, they're doing well. They really have played like the team that I think a lot of people expected them to be. But I will ask you guys before we move on, how close is that panic button? Is it on the desk? Is it in the next room? Is it within arm's reach? Like where is it relative to you right now?
For me, if they drop game 1, because Boone hasn't come out and said who the game 2, game 3, or game 4 starter would be, even though you could, make an assumption that it's going to be Tanaka, then Happ, then maybe Garcia, but he hasn't come out and said that. So they're banking on Cole to outpitch Snell in game 1, and the Yanks dropped that game. And I know, I guess it's a basic answer. Oh, if they lose the first game and are down the series, I'm gonna panic. But like that's where I am, at least with that question.
No, I completely agree. I think the game 1 is very, very important in this series. In the season series, I think they played 14 games against one another, and it's 12-2 in favor of the Rays. So obviously not a great look for the Yankees, but we talked about they weren't really playing up to their potential in the regular season either. So you got to wonder how much of that record, that 12-2 going in Rays' favor, plays into that. I think game 1 is very, very important though. And if the Yankees can get a win in that first game, it really sets the tone for the rest of the series. But goes the other way too.
Now, Dan, you mentioned the panic button, and I think a lot of people in Miami, Florida are panicking with their Heat, who are now down 2-0 in the NBA Finals. Game 3 is tonight, 7:30 on ABC. Lakers are up 2-0. And, we touched again on the podcast, which is on VIC from 11:30 to 12. which precedes this show. But Dan, since then, Eric Spoelstra has come out and said that he doesn't give a bleep if anyone thinks it's impossible to overcome this, and a lot of people, obviously in the media, saying this is probably over and this will be a sweep. So, if I guess the question is, what do you think the players on the Heat, with them being injury rattled, are feeling, and do the Heat have enough to make this a series?
I think Spoelstra's right that he shouldn't care what anyone thinks in the media. As hopefully a future member of it, I can say that I can't predict the future. I have no idea, but I think a lot of people agree with me, that the Lakers should take this series. I'm just putting myself in the shoes of the Miami Heat players. They can be as confident as they want, but they have to have Goran Dragic back, because he torched the Celtics all series. He was great all regular season. And Bam Adebayo has to come back, and he has to be able to play defense in the paint on Anthony Davis, because otherwise he's just going to get to the rim, and Dwight Howard for that matter, whenever they want. And that is just easy buckets that the Heat couldn't overcome in game 2. LeBron got to the rim whenever he wanted. Anthony Davis had another really good game. Dwight Howard was there. That's going to be hard to overcome, really, with injuries. So I think that if they can get beyond that, and they can, it's going to take a lot. It's going to take everything they've got to overcome 2-0 to the Lakers this series. But, mathematically, Spo's right. Yeah, they aren't eliminated yet.
Now, looking at this series in terms of the lens that everyone looks at it, and that's not, Lakers getting another title, or, Heat adding another one in the 2000s in which they've been, a contender for most of it. People are going to look and say, what does this mean for LeBron James's legacy? What does it mean? I've heard some people saying that maybe this quarantine's bubble championship is an easier road to the finals, and he's been in a weaker West, and some saying it's maybe the hardest championship he's won due to the irregular nature of this regular season and into the postseason. So what are your thoughts? I know you are level-headed when it comes to this, and, I know that you have an opinion regarding the LeBron and MJ debate, but in terms of LeBron's legacy, where do you put this? Do you put this as the most dominant NBA Finals performance that he has if they sweep, or is it just, all right, he added a 4th final in this COVID-19 year?
I think, this should be his 4th finals ring. Regardless of whether he wins or loses, I don't think it should shape anyone's opinion of LeBron James. Obviously it is. But, people are going to go crazy if he loses this. But he is up 2-0 right now. I don't know about legacy defining. This has been a really, really weird year for sports in general. But, the bubble's not easy. Things are weird down there. A lot of people think that if they weren't in the bubble and things were normal, the Heat might not be here, because they would have been on the road for a lot of these series, and that would have been very difficult. They were not nearly the team they were on the road that they were at home this year. So that, it's weird. But regardless, I think that if players legitimize this championship, and in the media we can listen to that, then I think this should definitely count as LeBron's legitimate 4th ring. And if you still want to think Jordan's better, that's fine. It's okay. That's all right. I'm okay with that. I think Michael Jordan's a great basketball player. But personally, I think it's LeBron James. And if you disagree with me, I'm okay with that. But, people on Twitter, they're not okay with that. Everyone has to yell about Jordan all the time.
Brennan, anything to add, or are we moving on to another?
Well, no, we talked about it on the podcast, the fact that Dan can't have an. You can't say that LeBron is better than Jordan. You can't have an opinion. It's not allowed.
No.
Bad. You're wrong, because I don't agree with you.
Yes, that's our culture. Anyway, we move from one legacy to another, and this is something I think me and Brennan, if we wanted to open the show with, we could have, but obviously so much is going on, and I think it sort of got buried. I don't think it got enough attention that I guess I would have wanted, but. The New York Rangers have bought out the contract of Henrik Lundqvist. He's been a Ranger for 15 seasons, has all the Ranger goalie records, a Vezina trophy, and was a Vezina finalist in 4 seasons. I believe a 5-time All-Star. And really, to me, my favorite Ranger growing up and the franchise. Every year, year in, year out, no matter what the roster consisted of, I felt going into the season that the New York Rangers could contend for a cup. Maybe in these latter years, the last 2, it's been obviously a little more difficult to wrap your brain around that happening. But especially from, I would call it the golden era, from 2011 to 2015 for the New York Rangers, he was the best goalie in hockey. And it's, I think it's really, I wouldn't call it a tragedy, because obviously a lot's happening in our world, but it's devastating as a Ranger fan that we never got Henrik Lundqvist the cup. You can't chalk that up wholly to front office because they did build, multiple iterations of teams that they thought were cup contenders, whether that be in 2008 with Chris Drury and Scott Gomez in those years, to the, McDonough and Callahan years with St. Louis, and to even, the new Rangers with Panarin and Zibanejad. But, I think at this time people are just going to look at the negative. Lundqvist never got a cup, but I want to celebrate his career, and Brendan, I know you want to do the same.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at a guy who plays a premium position, and especially not just in the context of the game, but in the context of fanhood as well. Most of the time, the most liked player on the team is either your enforcer or your goalie. So you love to see a guy like that go out on a good note, but at the same time, when it hurts the team, you got to try and find a balance. And I think that this was, we kind of saw it coming, and this kind of was where things were going from the beginning of the season, with the Rangers having two quality goalkeepers other than Lundqvist. So you don't like to see it, but at the same time, it was something that we had prepared for. We kind of were expecting to happen by this Wednesday deadline. And I mean, you look at Lundqvist's career. He's a guy that has won multiple trophies for being the best goalie in the league. He's always up there in conversation. I mean, just 2 years ago, he won the penalty shootout competition at the All-Star game, where he probably shouldn't have been in the All-Star game, but the Rangers needed a representative. So you're going to send the guy who's the fan favorite, and he goes out and wins. So, it's those kind of moments where, yes, the Rangers never won a cup. Yes, they only went once. But at the same time, he gave you a lot of quality years and a lot of quality saves, highlight reel plays that you can be a fan of and you can still enjoy as a fan, even though you don't have the cup.
Yeah, and I agree with that, pretty much everything you said, Brennan. And even off the ice, in terms of what he's done with his foundation, the Henrik Lundqvist Foundation, the Garnet Dreams, he's just been a consummate professional. I mean, the biggest, scandal or anything you could say negatively about him is, he models too much. He looks too handsome coming off a plane. That's the worst you could say about him in this modern era. That's amazing. He's been a great consummate New Yorker for 15 years. And, again, I hate to see him go. Luckily for the New York Rangers, I think they have the franchise goalie that's going to be there the next 10 years following him, and that's Igor Shesterkin. But, it's tough to see him, go away. And just on a personal note, too, Eli was my favorite Giant, gone. Lundqvist, my favorite Ranger, gone. And then, depending on what happens, I think Brett Gardner will have his final season as a New York Yankee as well. So I'm going to have to find some new favorite athletes for my team. But, I wish Henrik the best. I personally, and I know, Brendan, you fall in the same camp, do not want him to go anywhere else. Just retire, go back to Sweden. I don't want him to go win a cup with the Vegas Golden Knights. I don't want him to go to Calgary or anywhere. Just, but obviously he can make his own decision, and, a great career. A great career and a great
and you mentioned not wanting him to go to another team. I think at this point in sports, it's so rare for an athlete to only stick with one franchise for their entire career. I mean, we've been lucky to see it in New York sports quite a bit, with Derek Jeter being one of the greatest shortstops of all time and staying with the Yankees for his entire career, and now with Lundqvist being one of the greatest goalies of all time, one of the top two of the decade according to NHL.com, and staying with the Rangers for hopefully his entire career. But also, we got to put this into perspective. Think about how ugly Lundqvist could have made this buyout. I mean, after the Rangers bought him out on Wednesday, we saw both the organization and him post on Instagram, on Twitter, on any other social media, talking about the mutual respect between both of them and the decisions that each side had made. I mean, you don't always get that, but I think that it proves how much of a professional he is. It proves how much he loved being in New York and how much he loved being a Ranger specifically. And I think the organization tried to show as much respect as possible from their side, but also make good business decisions as well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And even those years too, even though I said earlier, cup contender every year, there was years the front office said, hey, Henrik, this maybe isn't the best roster we can compile right now, but it's a rebuild on the fly. Again, many iterations, and he stayed pat. And again, just a true professional, Brennan, like you mentioned. And tough to see him go. But the future is bright for the Rangers, who I believe this weekend's the NHL draft, and they will most likely take Alexis Lafreniere, and hopefully he contributes to the next golden age of New York Rangers hockey. But yeah, tough to see Henrik go. So now we'll shift to back to the NFL. It is an NFL Sunday, and we are 25 minutes away from the kickoff of the NFL's Week 4. And we'll start with what has been the main narrative this week, and that's COVID-19 altering 2 games, the Titans and the Steelers. That's still up in the air, but most likely not going to happen this week and has been postponed. The Patriots and the Chiefs, which was supposed to be the CBS game 425 national window, instead will be on Monday night. That's going to kick off 7:05, and Monday Night Football's kickoff of like 8:15 is pushed back to 8:50 now, and the Monday Night Football game being the Falcons and Brennan's Green Bay Packers. And, we touched on it last week, and the last couple of weeks we've had this show about concern with the NFL and COVID, and up to this point, they did a good job of corralling it in and, not having a lot of cases, but now obviously not ideal situation at all. Recent reports said the Patriots, no other player has been tested positive, but Cam Newton did have it. He's a marquee name, and a bevy of players in the Tennessee Titans organization had it. So your guys' reaction to this, because, like anything involving this COVID, it's a very serious matter, and, the NFL's got to take control of it, even though they're not in a bubble.
They're making too much.
Yeah, I mean, just think about the fact that this virus is deadly, and we are still playing sports in this country with it and traveling. It's ridiculous to think that the NFL could think they could go all year without not having this problem. They had to see this coming, and now that's here. Like I said on our podcast, this is something we're going to have to live with in sports for a while. So, maybe I can't watch my man Neve Schulman on Dancing with the Stars, and I'm going to have to watch some NFL football instead. But I don't know. This is just something we're going to have to deal with. And obviously, please, no one pass away from this in the NFL. Hopefully everyone can make a recovery, because, we talk about these players getting it and they recover. A lot of people do not recover from this. So hopefully they can, because this is a very serious problem the NFL is just having now.
Yeah, and we talked about it in the podcast where, we've seen COVID cases in both the MLB and early on in the NBA, but NFL franchises and NFL personnel, there's so many more people around an NFL team than there are for any other franchise. We talked about the Titans, and at the time, I believe it was 8 players and 6 personnel who had actually gotten COVID-19, but the number just continues to go up and up and up, because, you don't know you have it until you test. And the teammates are always around one another. They're always around the personnel. You have over 100 people in each organization. So if you have one person who has it, more than likely there's going to be a lot more people who they have interacted with and who may or may not have caught it. So we talked about it's an issue. I think the NFL kind of has to take a look at how many cases we've had just in the last week. I mean, we didn't have any up until this week, and now all of a sudden we have 2, possibly 3 teams who have confirmed cases, whether it be the Patriots, the Titans, the Vikings obviously are a question mark as well. You got to take a look at that and wonder why all of a sudden this is happening, and whether or not it has to do anything with the amount of traveling and the amount of personnel that go on individual trips with these teams.
And the main cause of concern, and you guys touched on it, but the NFL, in terms of a league, and this is not to pat them on the back for doing, but they have as many safety precautions and ways of getting around this as, humanly possible, and there's still cases, So, like, that's a tough thing, and, you can't say in terms of just any other professional league. Maybe you could argue NBA and the NHL, but they did have the bubble system, that the NFL is not the best league in terms of in the world of that's going on and isn't in a bubble system and has the right, COVID precautions in place. And it's week 4 and 2 games have already been postponed, to a later date. So, not great, but we'll shift from just, not taking care of business and a downside to our MVPs of the week. It's a new segment we introduced last week because we're the MVP show, Miller, Vicari, and Passante. And there are people who do good things in the week, whether it just be, it's really anything, just something we saw as a positive. Dan, I want you to start first because we sort of touched on the postponement of games, and yours sort of goes hand in hand with it.
Yeah, well, I just want to give my MVP this week to CBS as a whole because the Bills Raiders will be shown to 70% of the United States. This is just a smart decision. I mean, they had their Wheaties this week. They know what's going on to show the Bills to the majority of the country. And so they deserve the MVP, in my opinion, and everyone should enjoy this game because, as we mentioned, there's a lot of cases in the NFL. Who knows how much longer we'll have the NFL around, hopefully all season. So for now, yes, CBS, my MVP of the week.
And again, that's because the Patriots and the Chiefs not happening. So you have a choice. You have a choice in the New York market too. Giants, Rams, or Raiders and Bills. And as Dan said, most of the country will be getting Raiders, Bills on their CBS channel. Brennan, you have your MVP. You didn't put it in the chat in our little rundown. So maybe I'm concerned. I don't know.
My MVP is Sylvester Stallone.
Wow.
Always a good pick.
I know. Sylvester Stallone, exclusively because of his role in the Rocky franchise. I have a running theory that there has never been a bad boxing movie made.
Wow.
Never. Not one. I know that it's false. I get it. But any boxing movie that I have seen has been a good one. Whether it be Rocky, Rocky 4, Rocky 3. I'm just going to do all the Rockies, not in order. Sure. Creed has been very good. Southpaw, great movie. But the reason that I bring this up is because just this week, the movie Real Steel was added to Netflix, and I watched it last night. And it's not technically human boxing, but it's robot boxing. And it's a great story, and Wolverine is the main character, Hugh Jackman, and it's absolutely awesome. So my MVP of the week and of my life is Sylvester Stallone for introducing boxing to the mainstream.
Wow.
Boxing movies.
Wow.
Thank you.
So I guess we just won't count Grudge Match, him and Robert De Niro's boxing movie, in that category, or you count that one?
I mean, listen, it's all about who it's not about, mm-hmm. the little thing and the actual quality of the movie.
Sure.
It's about who introduced the mainstream, okay? They got Raging Bull, another De Niro boxing movie that's absolutely incredible. Yeah. The list goes on and on. $1 Million Baby, come on. They're all of them. Everyone, great movies.
Well, you won't get any disagreement from me and Dan. I think us three, that's one of the common, things we have. We're all big Rocky fans. Dan, I know you have the, I don't even know what to call it, like a bobblehead, or you're looking for it around. I'm obviously a huge fan. I have a poster, and my dad instilled in me to watch all these movies, and you guys do the same. You're looking around for it, Dan? Do you have it in hand, or because it is cool.
My dorm room overflow room, but yeah. Okay. I had it at school. That's why it was there. The Rocky, and it used to press the button, and like his arms would move. Yeah, I had that in my dorm room. Yes.
Yes. I think I have the worst MVP of the week now, just because you guys both came to play. I was gonna give it to Chris Wallace, but we're not gonna go political. He is my MVP of the week, if I'm being honest. But I'm going to give it to Lundqvist. We already touched on it, I know, but the way he handled, and we touched on it again, but the way he handled the buyout gracefully. Message to the fans, message to his team, message to New York in terms of his social media post. He handled it the right way. He couldn't do a traditional press conference. I'm sure they will. And I know once they put his number in the rafters, which will happen, that he'll handle that, with grace and do everything the right way, because that's what he's done his entire career. So, yes, those are our MVPs of the week. A little out of the box, and I think they delivered. Brendan, if you told me, what has he got? I did not think we were going in that direction. I really did not. But,
and this is something I wholeheartedly believe.
Yeah. No, I
will not listen to anyone else. I'm very stuck in my opinions. I also put an opinion out on Twitter that didn't get a lot of backing, but Hocus Pocus is a trash movie.
Wow. Yeah. Well,
as we enter October, terrible.
Yeah. I'm not a big Halloween
guy.
Halloween.
I love Halloween. One of my favorite holidays. Halloween movies, so bad.
Yeah, I mean, I am not the biggest either. I know Hocus Pocus is not a horror film, but not a horror film guy, not a Disney Halloween guy. That's the one with what? The 3 witches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first one you see every time it's the first movie played on 30 Days of Halloween or whatever. Yeah. Trash.
I skipped that every year on Disney Channel. I'd be like, "Yep, going to Nick." When I was a kid, that was that was not what I was watching. But good that you got that out there as well. I can't believe it's October too. It's absolutely crazy. But that's the current state we are in. And Brennan, do you have any updates on the current state of the NFL in terms of has another game been postponed and we've been doing the show and not know? Is there any injury news, fantasy updates you want to provide to us? In terms of the Giants-Rams game, which is pretty much the only game I know notes on, I know that Cam Akers, who is one of the Rams' three-headed running backs, in their running back attack, he's out. The Giants will be without Jabril Peppers this week after he sustained an injury, so their defense is taking even more of a shot as their safety is not going to be there. And Sterling Shepard, again, is on the IR, so he has not come back from it. Hopefully, I think next week will be the last week on the 3-week IR, and hopefully he doesn't have to go back on it, but he is a no-go for today either. And, so any other further updates in terms of injuries or anything along those lines, Brennan?
Nothing really new. We saw just before we went live that the NFL was going to move the Patriots game to Monday night, and we've kind of talked about that a little bit. As far as injuries go, actives, I'm just going to read a list here. DeAndre Hopkins going to be active for the Cardinals. Joe Mixon, Kareem Hunt, both active. Chris Carson, Terry McLaurin, Christian Kirk, Desmond Trufant, Tyron Smith, Trufant Diggs, Scotty Miller, all active. And then only two real notable inactives for today, officially, in Carlos Hyde and Ronnie Stanley. So no one, nothing that we didn't really expect, and no real big NFL news since we have started.
That's good. And Ronnie Stanley, if people don't know the name, an offensive tackle with the Ravens, and they're coming off a loss, and it's going to be interesting to see how they respond today. And it's that Maryland versus Baltimore rivalry as the Washington football team takes on the Ravens. Guys, now I want to go into our picks, and we'll start, as we always do, with the game of the week, lock and upset, and just a standings prediction, or a standings, reveal in terms of updating people. But I'm in last. I did not have a great week last week. I actually was under 500 in my picks, so I guess take your picks this week from me as you will. But the current standings are in our point system. I have 35, Dan has 39, and Brennan is our top dog with 41. Our records, and this is, not spread included. We do read the spreads when we give you the picks just so you have full context. But my record is 29-16, picking the wins and losses in the games. Brennan's is 34-11, and Dan's is 33-12. And the lock, upset, and game of the week are worth 2 points, while the rest of the games are worth 1. So that's why, even though Dan is only one game in total behind Brennan in terms of picking them right, Brennan has had more lock and upset picks that have come his way, so that's why he leads more in points. But we'll start with our game of the week. It was supposed to be, again, as we mentioned, Patriots-Chiefs was supposed to be CBS 4:25. That was the time slot. It's now moved Monday at 7:05. Still the game of the week, in my opinion, and even more storylines now of how these teams will adjust to the game being pushed back a week. I think it only helps Bill Belichick and the Patriots approach this Kansas City Chiefs offense. I think it'll be closer than maybe the spread of 7 indicates right now, but I still have the Chiefs. Brennan, what is your pick for the game of the week?
Yeah, I had the Chiefs going into this one when we did the first show earlier. I'm sticking with the Chiefs for this. I think my confidence now has only gone up since, obviously, unfortunately, Cam Newton was diagnosed or has come down with COVID-19. So sticking with the Chiefs.
Yeah, I'm going to stay with the Chiefs as well. I was just doing a little research to see if Carol Baskin is still in Dancing with the Stars. I don't know. I think she still is. So into Mondays, I don't know it's a tough decision. If you're going to watch Carol Baskin dance or Chiefs Patriots, that's like 50-50 for me. But I still got the Chiefs in that matchup.
Thanks for the analysis, Dan. In terms of
she's eliminated. She's gone now, so it doesn't even matter. So watch Neve Schulman. He's the eventual winner.
I agree with that. If you're gonna watch it, turn on Neve and MTV's Catfish.
Is there an athlete this year? Usually there's an athlete, right?
That's Neve.
There's a Bronco. I don't think it's Von Miller. Let me look it up. Dancing with the Stars.
Famous broadcast. John Elway.
That would be great.
That'd be insane. Terrell Davis.
I think it might be TD. Actually.
I'll keep looking.
Yeah, we'll keep going through our show while Dan does that. So we also have our locks and upsets, and again, we revealed these on the podcast. But if you're coming over from it or just went to this show, we're going to give you them, and we'll start with the lock. I'm picking an 0-3 team as my lock, and I know, John, you're 1-2 in locks. Just pick someone who's really good. No, I'm picking in the matchup of 0-3 teams between the Vikings and the Texans. The Texans are a 3.5-point favorite, and I think they get it done. Look, the Texans have had a tough schedule this year. Deshaun Watson has played the best of his ability in each of the games. The defense just couldn't stop the likes of the Chiefs and the Ravens. So I don't think the 0-3 is primarily on Deshaun Watson's shoulders, and this is easily the easiest team that they're playing, even though maybe going into the season I thought the Vikings were going to have a better defense. They don't. They're 0-3. They'll drop to 0-4. And my lock is the Texans. Brennan, since Dan looks like he's still researching, what is your lock for NFL Week 4?
My lock, I'm going to go with a game that at a -6.5 seems like a very, very low spread. I'm going with the Seattle Seahawks as my lock of the week. They're taking on the Miami Dolphins. And really, I don't think the Dolphins have shown anything that proves that they are, only less than a touchdown worse than the Seattle Seahawks, who at this point I think are a top 5 team in the league. So I really feel like that's just handing a pretty solid lock on a platter, and if it's out there, I'm going to take it.
Very nice, Dan. I believe your lock is very similar.
I got the Seahawks as well. I feel kind of bad because, I feel like in nature, a Dolphin is so cool, but they're just not good in the NFL. I feel like they're superior. And to answer your question, Vernon Davis is the one on Dancing with the Stars. I was watching his Paso Doble from last week. Not great, but he's still alive. So you can catch Vernon this week on ABC.
He's a tight end. He's got to have good footwork.
Yeah, he's got to do better. It wasn't great. He's got to get more into it. But
if you're gonna ask me who's gonna do better, Vernon Davis or Carol Baskin,
Vernon Davis.
It's a pretty easy answer.
What's the line on that? Minus a ton. I don't even know what dancing odds are, but yeah, whatever, the highest you can get.
I'm sure there's a way you could bet on Dancing with the Stars. I don't know how to do it. We don't have the odds provided to us. Now we'll shift to our upset. I'll go first. We have the Colts versus the Bears, and I picked the Bears in this one. Indy is favored by 2, and I know picking an undefeated team as your upset pick of the week is also, I guess, uncharacteristic, but the Bears being an underdog in this game with Nick Foles, while the Colts have looked shaky. Okay, they have a good record this year at 2-1, but they've looked shaky with Phillip Rivers. This offense doesn't excite me. The Bears' defense is very good, and I think putting Nick Foles in the starting quarterback role, giving him a week to look into the Colts defense, because he was in a backup role last week and still came in and performed well. You give Foles a whole week of preparation. I think Chicago's has enough weapons, and they had enough weapons for Trubisky to be successful, but Foles, I guess you can make the case, is the better quarterback, so I think the Bears will take care of Indy, and Chicago is at home, so that helps for them as well. Brennan, your upset of the week.
My upset, I'm going to go with a team that has been able to run the ball very effectively this year and is facing a team that has not been able to stop the run at all. So I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns, my upset, over the Dallas Cowboys. Get a little obligatory Cowboys talk in here because, you always have to talk about the Cowboys when you talk about the NFL. And I think their defense is a sieve. The fact that the Browns can run and the fact that the Cowboys cannot stop the run to save their life plays huge into me picking this game. And I think that it's going to, I said it in the podcast, the fact that Nick Chubb is going to run for maybe 600 yards today. So I hit that, and that's going to be my pick.
600 yards. And I joked putting in a Turning Stone Casino to make that bet. I don't think it's a good one, but sure. 600 yards. Dan, your upset of the week, and I like what you put in our Google sheet where we make these picks. You didn't put the team, but the quarterback.
Yeah, this week I'm taking Gardner Minshew over the Bengals. That's probably we were talking about it before the show, probably the most difficult game to pick, and I'm putting more points than I have to on that game. So that's not exactly smart, but I think Gardner Minshew is at least fun to watch, and it's fun to say his name, and it's going to be a really close game. And with no fans, who knows? I'm taking the Jags.
All right, we will now run through the rest of our NFL picks, and games have mixed up different times, but we start with the 1:00 games, and Dan, we start with the Chargers versus the Buccaneers.
We all have the Buccaneers in this game. Bucks are favored by 7. They're at home. Not that that matters, but I feel like Chargers just haven't shown me very much this season. The Bucks have shown more. Taking the Bucks.
Next game, Colts versus Bears. John already mentioned it as his upset of the week. The Bears +2 in this one, and Dan is going to have the Bears in this one as well. But I got the Colts. I think that Phillip Rivers is going to lead the Colts over the very highly overrated Bears.
Wow.
Yeah, Colts-Bears, another one you should avoid, kids. That's going to be a close game this week. What won't be a close game is Ravens and the Washington football team. We all have the Ravens, rightfully so. I've said I'm not picking this team all year. They have the worst name in the NFL, and the Ravens are a lot better. So definitely take the Ravens. They're favored by 14. It could be more, honestly.
You're up next, man. Yeah.
I have the next one, but we already talked about it. You guys have the Bengals. I have the Jaguars. Going to be a close one. It's in Cincinnati. We'll see how it goes.
Next game up is Browns versus Cowboys. You heard Brennan's thoughts on it. He thinks the Browns will pull an upset. Dan and I are in disagreement. We think that the Dallas Cowboys will handle business. Look, Dax looks good during this NFL season. Maybe the record isn't what Dallas Cowboy fans want. It's what a New York Giant fan wants, but not what the Cowboys probably should be if they want to be this Super Bowl contender that they were touted as being in the preseason. But Dak has looked good in all the games. I think he will do enough to get by Cleveland today. It will be close, but Dak does the job.
Next up is going to be the Saints versus the Lions. Saints favored by 4 in this one, and all three of us, like that spread. All three of us going with the Saints over my alma mater, Matt Patricia, and the Detroit Lions.
I believe I'm up next, and that is Vikings versus Titans. And look, the Vikings and the Texans, I already said are my lock. I'm confident in Deshaun Watson. I'm confident in the Houston Texans taking care of business. It's a matchup of 0-3 teams that I think most NFL fans would not think would be 0-3 in this spot. They are. I think Houston takes care of business. They, again, are my lock, and Brennan and Dan agree.
Next up, Cardinals versus Panthers. Arizona favored by 3. All three of us taking the Cardinals in this one. I think it plays big into the fact that DeAndre Hopkins is active for the Cardinals today. The offense is very good. Kyler Murray giving it to D-Hop, and Cliff Kingsbury calling plays on the side. So all three of us agree with the Cards over the Panthers. Next game, Seahawks versus Dolphins. Dan and I both have this one as our lock of the week. And John agrees with us, but he just wasn't as confident as we were. All three of us taking the Seahawks over the Dolphins.
Next game up, the gem of this NFL Week 4. It's the Giants versus the Rams. The Rams are favored by 13 points. Are you kidding me? Well, I'll tell you the reasoning why behind that spread is so big. Well, the Giants played the AAA 49ers last week. Didn't look great. The Giants have struggled with stopping teams on third down. They have allowed the most third down conversions this season. Behind the Chiefs, the Rams are the second best at converting on third down. That's a recipe for disaster for the Giants. The Giants also have to face Aaron Donald, who may be the best pass rusher in the NFL. The Giants' offensive line has not looked good this season. How could they win? I don't know. It's going to need a little pixie dust and a little Joe Judge, maybe special teams engineering. They're on the road at SoFi Stadium, and it's going to be hard for them, maybe even to cover. I, of course, will pick them because they are my team, and I don't stand. I will pick them, and I'll take, if it is, 16 losses in these picks. Of course, Brennan and Dan made the obvious choice of picking the Rams. If you're trying to get the optimist out of me, the Giants, in order to win this game, Jones needs to be on. Evan Ingram needs to have a great game. You saw that the Rams have a weakness in their linebacking core covering tight ends because Croft of the Bills last week had 2 touchdowns. Evan Ingram, show up. You only have 11 catches and 96 yards this season in 3 games. Have a good game. Ball out. The Rams linebacking core is the easiest you've faced this season, so go out there and perform.
For the sake of both of my fantasy teams, Evan Ingram, listen to that advice. Next game is Bills-Raiders. It's going to be really close. Myself and Brennan have the Bills. John has the Raiders. Either way, I can't really argue. It's, like I said, going to be a close game in Las Vegas, especially after last week we saw with Buffalo. Eagles, Niners. All of us have the Niners. Eagles just haven't looked great this year. The Niners have looked better, and I feel like that's how we all based our picks this week.
The second Monday Night Football game, Falcons versus Packers. Green Bay favored by 7. All three of us have the Packers in this one, but I mentioned it before we went on air. I think that this is a trap game for Green Bay. I think the Falcons have blown, obviously, 2 big leads this season in games that they should have won. So I'm going to say this is probably a game between a 3-0 team and a team that should be 2-1. I think Packers win, Falcons cover.
Final game on the docket, Patriots versus Chiefs. Again, we mentioned game of the week. We all have the Chiefs, and I think it will be closer than the 7-point spread indicates. So that does it for the MVP show. We alluded to talking on a podcast. Each Sunday now from 11:30 to 12, you could listen to us in a podcast form on VIC Radio. Again, 11:30 to 12. And then right after, shift over to the YouTube page, and you'll get us from 12 to 1. So an hour and a half coverage every Sunday before the NFL week kicks off. Boys, anything you want to say before we sign off?
Go Neve. Monday